So this is the guy that is considered to be the greatest bullfighter in Spanish history. And he retired this week very unexpectedly. He was only 46. He's had maybe one of the best years of his entire career.
Only 46? That's old for a sportsman in virtually any other discipline. How long do bullfighters go on for?
Well, it depends how long they survive, to be fair. Because he also had a really bad goring from a bull this week, actually. But yes, normally someone cuts off that ponytail for you, which is called the coleta, but he did it himself. So he surprised even his own team. And that has left the sport of bullfighting kind of with this enormous void, because he was considered to be, without precedent, the GOAT of Spanish bullfighting.
The goat of bullfighting. Two different animals to contend with there. All right, well, before we get into kind of general conversation then around the sport, and you can kind of guess the direction that inevitably we're going to go in on this, just on him, on Morante, can you just explain what it was about him that was so compelling to people, why he was bucking a trend and bringing bullfighting back for a lot of audiences?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, he was such an artist of his craft. I don't know enough about bullfighting to explain precisely what it is that would make you an artist, but he was certainly considered to be so. He was also nearly gored to death, like loads of times. So I think that is quite compelling, that there was all of these extraordinary comebacks and long absences due to depression as well as injuries. And he also had this really intense feud with another bullfighter, a much younger, a Peruvian guy who was quite a showman. And their somewhat symbolic but actually quite intensely passionate feud really drew attention as well. So sort of lots of different reasons why. But he was considered to be so mesmerizing to watch and such an incredible athlete and sportsman that people say that there was no one who was even close to him.
I mean, I can sort of get a sense of that, Jamie, just from that clip. I mean, we'll get into the ethics of bullfighting, but the costumes, the crowd, the drama, the sort of Latin emotion of it all, being the bloke who snaps off your own ponytail is kind of what would happen in a Pixar movie about bullfighters, isn't it? It has inherent drama.
Did you ever have a ponytail when you were younger?
It wouldn't suit me, I'm afraid. No.
No. Maybe that's the only reason that you haven't got into bullfighting. But
that must be it.
Yeah, I mean, from the clips that I've seen and like what I've read about him, there was something quite mystique about him, or mystical. The things I've read is that he revived kind of old moves. He rediscovered like forgotten techniques. He was very kind of introspective. He talked a lot about the kind of mental and emotional burden that kind of becoming a master in bullfighting carried. He spoke publicly of his mental health struggles. And as far as I can tell, he kind of had fits and starts in terms of his career. So he had periods of self-imposed retirement or withdrawal. But, from what the fans of the sport say, when he was on, he kind of was on. And this final flourish of cutting off, himself cutting off his own ponytail, there's so much symbolism there. I mean, it's a bit melodramatic, isn't it? But there's so much symbolism in terms of what it means for bullfighting, the ritual, the rupture, the kind of twilight of an era. The great thing about bullfighting is always that when it's written up in Spain, it's written in the arts pages rather than the sport pages, because it's about a kind of a dance rather than an actual sport. He clearly subscribed to that concept.
And yet, Felicity, let's get to the inevitable discussion here. In most countries of the world, people regard torturing a bull and then killing it for entertainment as a barbaric thing to do, needlessly cruel, and even in Spain, support for bullfighting is waning.
So 7 in 10 Spaniards oppose bullfights, and disapproval is strongest among the young and university educated. And fewer than 2% of Spaniards attended a bullfight between 21 and 22 season. However, of those spectators, those aged between 15 and 19 made up the largest group. So there is a sense that maybe amongst some young people, it's still very popular. And certainly when you look at the footage, these huge arenas are absolutely packed to the rafters. These are sellout shows of tens of thousands of people. I think there were fears that under lockdown it might sort of die away, but it's really come back with quite a force. And I mean, I think it depends where you are. And I think it's sort of in Spain follows political lines a little bit, that it is probably part of their cultural wars. And depending on which side you're on, and depending on where you are in Spain, if you're in a more rural region, it's still very, very popular, and it's held to be part of their tradition and their culture, and they will defend it to the bitter end. However, when I was looking at clips, I mean, yes, the sheer bravery and courage of having a bull charging towards you is quite incredible to watch. I do sort of understand that it's very difficult when you're outside of a culture to weigh in on it. I can sort of see the appeal and the excitement. But like you said, these bulls it's like a slow, agonizing death. I mean, lots of the kind of traditions of sticking in the sticks into the back of the bull, cutting off the ears and the tail. The bull has a long, slow, agonizing death. This is not a clean kill, which I think most people really object to. And there has, around the world, in other parts of the world where bullfighting goes on, there has been a push for bloodless bullfights. So earlier this year, Mexico City's Congress voted to ban traditional bullfights and replace them with a new bloodless spectacle where matadors
they just get guillotined.
The risks in some ways go up, really. Matadors can only use their capes, and bull horns are kind of protected with a, I don't know, sheath or protection or something to limit the suffering to the bull. And there's also other kind of variations of the sport where you can kind of like chase the bull, or like aggravate the bull, but the bull will not die and it will go back out to pasture. It's fascinating to me that in Spain and, you know, parts of southern France too, such a long and brutal tradition endures. But yeah, I do kind of also see it.
It sounds a little bit like fox hunting, if you're going to make a comparison with the UK, Harriet, in the sense that it goes down political lines. It's rural versus city. It's about animal rights, but it's not really, as Felicity was saying, it's sort of proxy culture war.
It's not really, I don't think it's really analogous, to be honest, because it doesn't really go down the rural city lines. But you're right that it does go, it's very much become a political wedge issue, a real cultural issue between the left and the right. So the populist left-wing alliance is trying to abolish the sport. At the moment, it's got protected status as part of Spain's cultural heritage. It also supports an industry worth about 1.6 billion euros per year. So it's incredibly important. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money
from
in this.
What? Apart from ticket sales and breeding bulls, what else is there? Merch.
I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. Also, tourist knickknacks, things like that. You know, people that work in raising the bulls. They think 1/5 of Spain's remaining natural landscape is used to raise fighting bulls. So there's a lot of money, and it's not just Spain, as we were saying. It's also Colombia. It's also Mexico. It's a lot of money involved, and it has become a cultural and political wedge issue because Spain's far-right Vox party has run matadors in elections. It has a tent outside the bullfighting ring in Madrid. It's also become an issue for Catalan separatism as well. So Catalonia was the first region to ban bullfighting in 2012, not because it was archaic or cruel or because public sentiment turned against it, but because it's a symbol, and has been since Franco's time, a symbol of a unified Spain. And obviously for Catalan separatism, that's not really kosher. And just this year, more than 700,000 Spanish people signed a petition to remove that protected status so they could maybe think about moving towards bans or towards more protection. But just last week, the socialist-led government refused to let Parliament vote on that motion, which really angered both people who opposed bullfighting and people who defended it. The reason that I chose it as my story is because I think it says something very interesting about how populist movements, both on the left and the right, are so increasingly focused on tradition and declaring that any opposition to traditional, possibly archaic or anachronistic practices is some kind of sort of woke ideology. Because of that, there is an astonishing surge in interest in populism among very young people. So like we were saying, the number of fights and registered bullfighters has actually increased since 2019, despite the fact that public sentiment has turned so much against it. I think that says something very interesting about populist movements in Spain and in Europe in general.
Yeah, okay. Well, Jamie, if Harriet didn't like my analogy of fox hunting, here's a more contentious one for you. Maybe, given what she just said, it's like the royal family. I mean, I know Spain have a royal family too, but, I bet even Spanish people don't know who they are. But I mean...
No, they definitely do. Come on, we've spoken about the Spanish royal family on this podcast like so many times. The Spanish royal family are even more dramatic than ours.
In the sense that if you were to ask someone, Jamie, in the street, would they invent bullfighting now? They'd say no, that sounds cruel and silly. They kind of think, well, it's good for tourists, it's part of our national identity, it's what makes us Spanish, in the same way that Brits tend to feel about the royals.
Yeah, I think great analogy, Ollie. The idea about like cultural protection versus kind of like ethical evolution, like how do societies decide, which traditions merit protection, which should be phased out. I mean, when you read about bullfighting and the ideas behind it, about it being related to death and a performance of kind of understanding the importance or the kind of memento mori nature of it, there's lots of ways in which it's kind of characterized in a way that isn't just about the torture and the kind of really awful things that are being done to bulls. I think that the other aspect of it that is interesting is about the youth. As Felicity was saying, that the teenagers that are going to see it and do take up a lot of the attendance. What's driving that? Is it just teenagers being teenagers and wanting to rebel? Or is it actually speaking to perhaps a pushback against what Harriet was describing as, woke liberal ideology? Are there people, younger people now being like, we've had too much of this? All of those questions, any kind of political flashpoint about culture and about what we choose to fund, because there's a huge amount of state funding that goes into bullfighting, and that's part of the problems over it. That kind of tension over it it exists in the UK all the time about where the money goes in terms of what culture we should protect and what shouldn't we protect. So, I mean, I think there's lots of things that we can take away that isn't just, isn't bullfighting horrible, and to see how they react in that way is going to be really interesting.
I mean, I started the show by asking you if I could give you a free ticket, would you go and watch sumo wrestling? I suppose let's ask the same question for bullfighting. It's one thing to buy your own ticket, isn't it? But let's say, I work for the Spanish Tourist Board and I'm giving you a top seat at the ring worth €200 with a meal included. Felicity, are you going?
I don't think I would. When I was watching the YouTube clips, I found it very exciting and exhilarating to begin with, to see the bull come rushing out, and I was really into that. But towards the end of it, I honestly couldn't stomach it. It was just too much by that point. I don't think it's for people to come along and say, ban it, ban it, ban it. And it's certainly not for me to say that. I am really, really torn. I get that it's a noble tradition. I get that it's bravery and courage and artistry and all the rest of it. And on the other hand, but partly, I guess, because the Brits are animal lovers, aren't we, really? I find it just... watching the suffering, a clean kill is one thing, but the suffering is, to me, is unconscionable, really.
Jamie, would you go?
No, I struggle with watching any kind of gory film, so I think the idea of seeing it in real life would probably be a bit too much for me.
Harriet, I'm saving you for last because I've got a sneaking suspicion, given your Latin American connections, that you might have already been.
I actually haven't, but I think that I would go. And that's not to say that I agree with it or think that it's not incredibly cruel and bloodthirsty and anachronistic, but it's a 900-year tradition involving so much courage and history and artistry. This is why I was pushing back on you trying to make an analogy with fox hunting in the UK, which is, a vast array of people on horseback running down a fox in the mud. There's no necessary... I'm not saying there's not courage or artistry involved in that. I have no idea.
Well, centuries of tradition. That's there.
Yeah, but
the breeding argument, that's there.
I'm trying to rationalize why I would be interested to see it, despite the fact that I think that it should be banned and phased out. I think probably because I think it will. I think a blanket prohibition on bullfighting is coming, and it's coming soon. Already a blanket prohibition on it is coming in Colombia in 2027. Mexico is moving towards banning it. I think that it will eventually be phased out in Spain. So I think just the opportunity to see something that is so integral to a culture and so historic and so magnificent in some ways, I think that would be the thing that would interest me in going.